The purpose of creation is so that the one infinite creator might know itself by experiencing itself. We are experiencing ourselves at a very low level of consciousness. In a couple of years, we're going to have open contact with physical beings. The average human has incarnated over 3,000 times. A large number of us began the experience on Venus. It was at the time called Zenoa. There have been significant civilizations that were much more advanced than we are. There are still remnants of Atlantis under the Atlantic Ocean. The Anunnaki as a whole are negatively polarized. They have manipulated our DNA, which has limited our capacity to evolve.
So tell me more about your journey into consciousness and enlightenment and discovering all of that. When did that begin for you?
Well, it began in earnest about my 50th year. And as most folks, we are planned, designed to have experiences, and it is through those experiences that we learn. That's why we have experiences. We misperceive, for the most part, that we can, through experiences, learn about the world around us and other people. But the reality is, those things, people, places, and things, are giving us the opportunity to learn about and explore ourselves. And so, and we do this, we learn at this range of consciousness. We all share a common range of consciousness, and we are all tasked with exploring awareness and learning to use awareness as both the discovery tool and the healing tool to our misperceptions of self, in advancing ourselves along the consciousness evolutionary journey, which is synonymous with enlightenment. Most people misperceive enlightenment primarily because of the Buddha's teachings and accomplishments, that enlightenment is a destination, but the reality is that enlightenment is the path. And so with that in mind, everyone is already enlightened to the degree that they have allowed themselves to advance along the enlightenment path. So it's not a matter of becoming enlightened. It's a matter of realizing that you are consciousness, and you are tasked with evolving by advancing yourselves along the enlightenment path.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Tell us more about, I guess the purpose of this, right? Because you're talking about being here to learn certain things. And I know when you're in the crux of it, it's not kind of easy to digest that information. When someone is going through, for example, like a heartbreak, or they just experience a death in the family, or I don't know, they've experienced some type of very unpleasant trauma that wounded them. How can we begin to put these things into, I guess, how can we begin to reconcile it with our purpose of being here? Because sometimes all of those things and the experience of all those things and the woundedness felt from all of those things kind of overshadows, what we feel like we're meant to experience here and what our purpose here is.
Okay. We are consciousness. Everything that we experience is consciousness, and all of creation is consciousness. But consciousness is stratified into vibrational levels, and that stratification is made possible by a distortion of perception. And the distortion of perception that began creation and was purposeful is called free will. And free will is a concept that we misunderstand because we perceive that free will is the choice of being able to turn right or turn left at our individual discretion. But the reality is that free will is our perception of separation. And it is only because we perceive ourselves as separate from people, places, and things, and most importantly, from the Creator, that we have the perception of choice of whether to make these individual choices.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of creation is so that the one infinite Creator might know itself by experiencing itself. We are experiencing ourselves at a very low level of consciousness, which means we have a lot of free will intoxication.
Mm.
Free will, the more free will that we have, the more intoxicated we are free will, and free will intoxication works very much like alcohol. When we drink a lot of alcohol, then our awareness is reduced from what it would be if we were not intoxicated with alcohol. And we do usually more stupid things when we're intoxicated with alcohol than we would if we were not. We are very intoxicated with free will, and so our perception of separation is almost absolute. And so, consequently, we do stupid things,
Mm.
uh, not knowing that we are actually the one infinite creator experiencing ourselves at this range of consciousness. The whole evolutionary process of consciousness and the entire enlightenment process, which extends below us into even more intoxicated ranges of consciousness and significantly above us. There are 8 ranges of consciousness, major ranges.
Mm.
We are sharing the third range from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are um, elementary in our beginning the evolutionary journey back to reunification by the total surrender of our free will intoxication.
Mm. Wow.
Now,
Yeah. Sorry, I'd love for you to get into the 8 ranges of consciousness.
okay, well, um, if you understand that creation is the creator sending analog projections of itself as far away from its recognition of oneness as it
Mm.
can, and then allowing that analog projection to evolve back to total unity with the creator from whence it began, and uniquely exploring itself all along the way. And by virtue of that journey and the liberation of exploring however that perceived individualized unit of consciousness to explore its experiences, then the creator most infinitely is able to know itself through all of these creative varieties that the perceived separate parts of the creator employ in evolving. So creation actually began at the top of the rung. The 8th range of consciousness
Mm.
is the creator as the subject, which simply means it is equivalent to the one infinite creator, with the only distinction being that it perceives itself as separate from the one infinite creator. So
Mm.
it is the one infinite creator conceptually that perceives itself as separate from the originating one infinite creator.
Mm.
Uh, the creator as the subject begins to further develop um, creation according to the original plan of the creator as the object, which is the original one infinite creator. And by creating fractal layers of consciousness by using this free will intoxication, creates a 7th range of consciousness, which is unique because in the 7th range of consciousness, it is a fractal of the 8th range of consciousness, but certain inherent characteristics that are inherent to the one infinite creator became delineated. And those
Mm.
characteristics are awareness, love, wisdom, unity, and stillness. And those five inherent characteristics are the pattern for the further creation of all of creation. Um, the seventh range is tasked with exploring stillness. And it is that range of consciousness is subdivided into what are called the ranges are called densities, which, if you think of a density as a mile, and dimensions within the density would be an inch. And so we incrementally explore as deeply and completely as possible the inches to, again, progress as deeply as possible to the unification with the Creator. The
Mm.
seventh density is a fractal of the eighth density. The sixth density is also a fractal of the seventh density. It is also divided into inches, but it is the broadest range of consciousness. Consciousness has a scale, and each density, for the most part, is divided into 8 platform levels, subdivisions of these dimensions. The sixth density is actually 8 divisions, so it is twice as wide, twice as large as any of the other densities.
Mm.
Uh, the sixth, seventh, and eighth are deemed to be creator being densities. The sixth density is primarily responsible for managing. They're the day to day managers of the lower five densities, which includes us.
Mm-hmm.
Our higher selves all are of sixth density. So when we are communicating with our higher selves, we are communicating of our, as they describe it, ourselves in the future as a sixth density level, but they are um, our guides,
Yeah.
uh, and they create us. They arrange for us to incarnate and do all the things that we do to explore creation. The
Mm-hmm.
fifth, fourth, and third ranges, and we're the third in the third ranges, are considered to be experiential densities.
Mm-hmm.
The third range is just the beginning, our elementary evolution into exploration of consciousness, and it is the first range that has adequate awareness in order to assume responsibility for our evolution and actually explore according to one of the inherent characteristics of the Creator. The
Mm.
fifth density explores wisdom the same way that we explore um, awareness. The fourth density explores love, same way that we explore awareness.
Mm-hmm.
In third density, we get a peek behind the curtain as to what love feels like, but we can't stay there all the time because we don't have the consciousness in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So our evolution within fourth density will begin where we leave off in third density, which is the platform level of having become awareness. And we will use that awareness to explore ourselves as love, that aspect of ourselves as love, until we become the love that we already are. In other words, we're removing the distortions of perception of self all
Mm-hmm.
through that evolutionary process to expose ourselves as the creator love that we already are. Second and first density are foundational densities,
Mm-hmm.
and the first density, if you, for the sake of ease of explanation, is inorganic matter, including fire. Fire is the lowest range of consciousness, but it is still consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Second density are plants and animals, and they are foundational because they, in and of themselves, do not have the consciousness awareness adequate to assume responsibility for their evolution, but they are necessary to provide us with the opportunity for what we perceive to be the physical world, planets. So, third density and fourth density can have a place to live and evolve.
Thank you for that explanation. Wow. Yeah. I mean, so from knowing this, where do you think we're headed right now in our level of consciousness? Like when you kind of like look at where we are situated as a humanity, right?
Hmm.
Like where do you think we're headed right now with our level of consciousness?
Well, there are great varieties of ranges of consciousness that occupy the Earth experience,
Mm,
and understand that what you and I see are the analog projections of our metaphysical self. We simultaneously exist in the metaphysical world, which is our enduring self. It does not die, and that is actually what is evolving, is our metaphysical self. Our
mm-hmm,
metaphysical self is shaped. It is a consciousness pattern. It's not physical as we perceive ourselves to be physical, but it is a consciousness pattern, and we have shaped that by incarnating a multitude of times into a physical world existence. And what we learn in a physical world existence is
mm,
incorporated into our metaphysical self. And so each time that we reincarnate, it is wherever we are metaphysically, our metaphysical self is the
yeah.
starting point for a new incarnation. Uh, in most third density experiences, the and consciousness pattern has the capability of incarnating in multiple incarnations simultaneously. Uh, Earth has had a very difficult evolutionary path,
Mm,
and because it has been very difficult, we actually have a um, across the board very low level of consciousness energy available to us. And so, for the most part, we are able to incarnate in only one lifetime at a time. But what is
mm,
preserved after a lifetime, all of the the technical knowledge that we gain, all the parchments on the wall, the MDs, the PhDs, whatever we have accumulated in a lifetime, goes into the ground with us, with our body. The only thing that is preserved is those what we have learned about the inherent characteristics of the Creator:
mm-hmm.
awareness, love, wisdom, unity, and stillness. And so those are what is shaping, and those are the measure of how we're doing in our evolution. Uh, Within the Earth experience right now, we are at a crux point. We have, in February of 2016, finished the a third density cycle. It is for the a large number of us the fifth attempt to graduate from third density that
Mm-hmm.
has historically been unsuccessful, obviously, since we're still in third density for the most part. But we have begun a new third
Yeah.
density experience, but we have simultaneously begun a fourth density experience that is still commingled with the third density experience.
Mm,
So the majority of the children that have been born since the mid 2000s, 2004, 2005, that range in there,
mm,
are fourth density children. And they are just becoming of age. They're just getting to that 20 something year age where they're beginning to recognize their assumption of adult responsibilities.
yeah.
And so they will be, as they mature more and assume more responsibility, will be much less accepting of the foibles that third density has demonstrated and is still continuing to demonstrate um, in the Earth experience. And that will continue until the fourth density actually separates from the third density. The third density will continue on. And the hope is that by affiliation and association with the fourth density children, that will escalate the consciousness awareness of the ongoing third density population. But the fourth density will begin a fourth density experience that will continue to be in parallel, but they won't interact.
Interesting. Can you tell me a bit more about how that works when we're on different frequencies? We're all here on Earth, but we're all on different wavelengths, right? There are
Well,
people that are in the third, and then there's people that's in the fourth. And how does that work?
we are distinguished by vibrational frequencies, our metaphysical pattern. our consciousness pattern is a vibration, and we are recognized by vibrational uniqueness
Mm-hmm.
as a cumulative population that has incarnate. That population has a vibration as well, and we perceive space and difference. There is no such thing as distance. There is no such thing as time, other than in our perception.
Mm.
The distinguishing factors are vibrations. We perceive ourselves to be in a linear time experience, and so
Yeah.
we measure vibration according to frequency. But frequency is a time measurement.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're outside of time, which most of creation is, then you don't measure things according to frequency. You measure things according to an empirical vibration,
Yeah.
and that's reflected mostly in color.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah. Wow. So, okay. So you said earlier that a subset of people living in fourth density will not, when you're at that density, you kind of don't interact at all,
Right.
right? Or can you,
Third density
like,
won't interact because they won't have the capacity to elevate their vibration adequately to interact. For the most part, there are exceptions to every rule,
yeah.
and there are in our experience today. Someone who is vibrationally tuned to higher frequencies communicates, very liberally with the higher consciousness levels. But
Yeah.
as a rule, that's not a third density experience. Fourth density will, as they develop their capacities as fourth density beings, will have the capacity to interact with third density, but for the most part, they will choose not to because the higher densities. Um, are you familiar with the Star Trek concept of non-intervention, or the
Yeah.
prime directive? I think they call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that actually is a rule in higher consciousness, that they don't interact to any point that would potentially hinder the choices being made by lower consciousness.
Yeah.
And so fourth density, until they mature as a population, won't interact with the third density once that separation takes place.
It gives like a whole different perception when you think about it in that way. Um, because like when we, like, the way how we kind of perceive our environment and the things that's happening out in the world right now, everything seems so chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
So just saying how our experiences will be so different, and the way that we interact with each other may or may not, that may or may not even happen depending on so many factors and the frequency at which you're at. But we experience so many things collectively, right? So
Mm-hmm.
to it's just amazing thinking how each and every person can experience this differently based on where their frequency is situated. It's truly phenomenal.
Well, when you magnify that infinitely, then it becomes even more difficult to comprehend. Creation is more vast than our wildest imagination can comprehend. Um, the inherent character, our universe, our galaxy, is a 9-star galaxy, and that means that it has expanded in groups of 9 stars. Each star is home to an archetype of the creator. Our sun is occupied by awareness.
Hmm.
No, I'm sorry, by wisdom.
Hmm.
And there are 8 other stars that also have others of the five inherent characteristics, but we also are comprised of four distortions,
Mm-hmm.
which each is an archetype of the creator at sixth density range of consciousness. And
Mm-hmm.
each star is a sixth density range of consciousness.
Mm.
Um, and the distortions that we have that facilitate the types of experiences that we have are awareness, free will, which is part of every experience, uh, um, unconsciousness, which is
Mm.
something that we are tasked with overcoming, and we have an enhanced perception of separation. And so those four distortions, along with the five inherent characteristics, comprise the framework for our all of our galaxy, and all of the galaxy has expanded in groups of nine stars.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, I have a podcast that we communicate with the Arcturians. The Arcturians have long been involved as guides of the earthly population. The
Yeah.
Arcturians are simply another nine-star system. They're a sister nine-star system that has been in the process longer than our nine-star system, and so they have been a long-time guide and sister to our entire nine-star system.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Wow. So, yeah, I'd love to know more about the Arcturians and how they assist us, or what do they think about the processes that we are experiencing currently right now on the earth.
well, they understand the difficulties that we've experienced, and as I say, they've been involved with us for a long time.
Mm.
And they're non-critical. They offer information that is um, scaled down to what the third density can understand,
Mm-hmm.
and providing truthful information to us. And it is through that contact that heretofore the higher consciousness at historical times in our evolutionary journey have been much more interactive than they have been in the last, say, 5,000 years.
Yeah.
And that was reduced because of difficulties that was causing, and we were quarantined for a long period of time as a planet. And so the number of uh, communication sources was severely restricted because of our limitations, not because of their unwillingness to help.
Yeah.
And so they let us evolve, and contact has been greatly accelerated in the last 150 years or so. And now it is probably at a peak because it is anticipated that in a couple of years we're going to have open contact with physical beings that will
Mm.
be providing us with all sorts of information, including a truthful history of our experience, which I'm looking forward to.
Wow. Okay. So, have you, in the process, I guess, communicated with any other beings outside of our galaxy other than Arcturans? Because there are like quite many of
We are.
them.
I personally, I communicate with my higher self. My higher self is a sixth density entity that has long is one of the creators of Earth, and um, when after my awakening that we started talking about around my fifth year, then I began communicating with my higher self. They are of the inherent characteristic of love, which is
Mm.
also known as Ra.
Mhm.
Ra is the name for that inherent characteristic of the Creator. So Ra is pervasive to all of creation. Our sun, which is home to, as I said before, wisdom, which is called law, LA, just like Ra is RA.
Mm.
And they again are pervasive to all of creation because they are an inherent characteristic, and they have long been involved, and I have communicated with aspects of law as well as Ra.
Mhm.
Ra communicated most directly with a group in Louisville, Kentucky in the early 80s, and channeled Carla Ruckert channeled Raw as, and they printed it into books as the raw material, which are still available today in 5 books.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
communicate with an aspect of Raw.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So as you're speaking about this, and you said so many things, right? I want to know, right? Because like when you think about the lives that we've had before, um, our higher self and information that we can get there, and it's rolling all of this. When we think about the past experiences that we've had, like maybe the other incarnations that we've had on the earth or on other planets and other galaxies, how are we then impacted by that? Because like as you said before, like we leave the material things, but then we have all of these lessons that we learn about the nature of life and the nature of being.
Mm-hmm.
So, taking all of that with us from other lifetimes, how do you like, I guess, how does that kind of bleed into the experiences that we're having right now?
Okay. Well, again, what is preserved after an incarnation. The average human has incarnated over 3,000 times,
Oh my
and some
goodness.
as many as 8,000. So
Whoa.
we've been in the process a while,
Yeah.
approximately 850,000 years. We began, most of us, a large number of us, began the experience on what is now called Venus. It was at the time called Zenoa,
Hmm.
but in the course of our evolution through a range of third density consciousness, we blew the atmosphere off of the planet, which ended the third density experience. We were transferred to another planet to begin another third density experience. That planet was called Maldak.
Hmm.
And Maldak now is the asteroid belt that circles our um, solar system on the other side of Mars because we blew that whole planet up,
My
and it
goodness.
interrupted the third density experience. So from Maldak, we were transferred to Mars, and the things that they are discovering on Mars are the remnants of our civilization that we had or that we created on Mars, but we blew the atmosphere off of Mars.
Oh
And
my
so that
God.
ended that third density experience. We were transferred to Earth and began again. That was the fifth attempt at graduating from a third density experience, is when we were
Oh my
transferred
goodness.
to Earth. And we had great difficulty here. There have been significant civilizations that were much more advanced than we are on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we Atlantis was a continent, and we had a significant nuclear war on um, Atlantis, but eventually Atlantis was sunk by a meteorite. And so there are still remnants of Atlantis under the Atlantic Ocean. And so we began again, and all of these times we've begun again. And when we came to Earth, the group that began on Venus was added to with 15 other civilizations from other third density experiences outside of our solar system. So Earth began what they call as a second chance planet. So we were like a reform school
Mm.
in order to try to get together and learn to work together and evolve through the third density experience. But we've had a very paltry history of actually moving people out of third density into fourth density because of these difficulties. Now, we've had great interference from negatively polarized groups around uh, the creation. One of the more strategic things that we are tasked with accomplishing in third density, in addition to becoming awareness, is making a choice. And it's simply called the choice. And the choice is to decide whether we are going to develop our experience through evolution as service to others or service to self. The service to self is considered to be the negative path and the indirect path back to the creator because it doesn't ever align with the creator.
Mm-hmm.
And the service to others is that path that is progressing towards unity. And we've had great interference primarily from two groups that have distorted our distortion of our experience, referenced as the Anunnaki, and the Metatron, which is another competing group. Anunnaki has been the primary one that has continued to put its sticky fingers in our evolutionary process. And so a lot of the distortions of perception, everything from intensified perception of separation to um, wars to religion, are all concepts that the Anunnaki has provided us with to keep us from evolving. They wanted to keep us suppressed because they interfered with our evolutionary potential to the point to keep us as a subordinate population to do their bidding.
Wow, so many
So
things
that's
there.
one of the reasons that we were quarantined.
Wow. Okay. Okay, first of all, we're really good. It seems we're really good at blowing stuff up.
we are masters at that. Yes, we are. If there's anything that we have been successful at, that would be at the top of the list. Yeah.
That is wild. And literally, I think we've almost probably blown Earth up at some point too, right?
Well,
But
Earth is multi-dimensional, so there are multiple versions of Earth that are all existing simultaneously, including a version of Earth that still has dinosaurs thriving and doing well.
wow. Wow, okay. I think that's another conversation that I'm really interested in, by the way. But okay. All right. So you mentioned Anunnakis. You mentioned Metatron. I'd love to know because, as with everything, there are people who lean towards one side. There are people who lean towards the other side. Like, would it be weird to think that there were some Anunnakis who were helpful, who were more helpful than harmful? Like, what role? Like, I'd love for you to get more into the role that they played in kind of dabbling in our human affairs and where that kind of left us and how, because like of course you have the ones that dabble for their own like self-serving purposes, and then you have the ones that are probably of more service that are more helpful to us. So I'd love for you to like give me a bit of both and like how that interplay kind of affected us as a human race.
Well, in multiple ways, and we could spend a day talking about the multiple ways that they've affected the population and hindered
Yeah.
the population. A group of Anunnaki, that the Anunnaki as a whole are negatively polarized, but they
Yeah.
still have rules, even along the negative path. And a subgroup of the Anunnaki a long time ago, and this has been they can only affect our physicality. Okay, they
Okay.
cannot affect our consciousness pattern. So they have interfered with the incarnational populations that we have occupied on Genoa, Venus, and Maldek, and Mars, and Earth. They, they, what we learn from our incarnations is incorporated into our metaphysical self, but our metaphysical self doesn't have the body that we do now. What
Yeah.
they have principally done in the Metatron was also to a degree, much less so in the Earth experience, but more so in our earlier incarnational experiences. They have manipulated our DNA, which has limited our capacity to evolve. They wanted to keep us um, under their thumb to do things to help their existence. And they were recalled by the Anunnaki because they did this. But their base, their headquarters to do this, were actually in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And in their language, that base where they manipulated the physical DNA to uh, limit our capacity to evolve was called E Done.
Mm.
And there's a modicum of truth in every distortion that we perceive. And the Garden of
Yeah.
Eden is
Yeah.
actually called Eden, which it was not Eden, it was Eden in their language, but that was where our DNA was manipulated, and then which is limiting information, limiting our capacity for education, which is the Garden of Eden and the apple and the whole story that evolved
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
Garden of Eden. And so every human on earth at the time, and it was significantly less populated than what we are now, but you understand how genetics work, and you significantly distort a core group. And of course, they have children and children and children and
Yeah.
procreate and so forth. And so that genetic distortion spread to the rest of the population.
Yeah.
And so we have, for thousands of years on Earth, and the same thing occurred in these previous incarnational experiences. The excitement was that we actually completed a third density experience in February of 2016 without blowing up the planet again.
Yeah.
That was considered to be a great accomplishment.
Yeah. That is hilarious. But, thinking of our DNA, right? And how it has been manipulated. You mentioned um, the civilization before us, the Atlanteans. You know, I'd love to know though, like, are there any aspects of that energy remaining within our DNA that we can still access? Because they were here too and they did their thing and they were like far more advanced than us.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were technologically advanced. I don't know that they were significantly spiritually advanced
Mm,
from what we are. But yes, there are multiple versions of Earth, and there are versions that are more spiritually advanced than us, and there are versions that are very, relatively speaking, primitive. And as I alluded to, there are versions of Earth where the dinosaurs still roam freely. So all of these, once they're created, they don't go away. They just follow their own path. And
yeah.
understand these are segregated by vibration.
Mm,
And we perceive that time is linear. We perceive that um, we start today and we can't go back or sideways or can't jump ahead to the future. The reality is that when we are choosing our next incarnation, we will choose that incarnation from the entire spectrum of possibilities of the third density experience, which may be at the beginning, what we would perceive to be the beginning of the third density experience or near the end of the third density experience that would be, from our perspective, some point in time in the future, because these are available laterally when we are outside of time and not linearly.
Mm.
So we can, through meditation and concentration and elevating our consciousness, we can have great recall of what we perceive to be past lives,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't get to remember future lives.
Yeah.
And that's by design.
Mm-hmm.
Time is nothing more than our limited capacity to process more than one thought at a time. And that's
Yeah.
part of our design.
Mm.
If we could stop our thought, we could move out of time. But we can't
Yeah.
stop thought, which is a misnomer that people think that, well, I'll meditate and just stop my thought. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. You don't stop your thought, you just quit. You get out of the flow of the thoughts, but you're still processing thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, you mentioning, okay, going back to when we come out of this incarnation, and before, I guess we have this we're at this frequency whereby we are thinking about what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going next? What would we like to experience next? Which leads me back to death and how we perceive death, because of course when you think of it in the grand scheme of things, there's no death, but in the physical form it's a painful thing for us, because I guess this is what we're here to experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you think about religion and what religion tells you about that, or culture, or anything that society or anything external to you tells you about these things and the meaning we've ascribed to these things, is very limiting. It's scary for some. There's a lot of grief, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of fear around that as well. And I've also heard of situations where, for example, there are people who might pass and they might not cross over immediately. They might stay on Earthworm for a bit. So I'd love for you to kind of give some context to that experience and what's really happening when it's time for us to exit. Like, is it ever too early? You know what I mean? Like, because we use terms like untimely death and things like that. So like, I'd just love for you to put all of this in context, because I think this is like a really important piece to everything that you're saying as well.
Okay. The transition is as easy as changing clothes. Um, we we are an analog projection of our metaphysical self. Conception of an infant is at random, but the habitation of that physical body is usually by the choice of the incarnating spirit,
Mm,
or if the incarnating spirit is very um, infantile in its evolutionary progression, then the higher self will choose that incarnation based upon what that the probability that that lifetime, with the circumstances of parents and siblings and neighborhood and body type and all of that, will provide that spirit with the opportunity for experience to learn what it needs to learn at the stage of development that it is in.
mm-hmm,
Once we achieve a certain degree of proficiency and awareness in our own evolution, then we will choose the lifetimes that we need in order to have the probability of providing us with the types of experiences that we need to explore ourselves. So we incarnate as white people, we incarnate as black people, we incarnate as males, we incarnate as females, whatever possibility of combination of ingredients that would contribute to the nature of our experiences is possible. And so we will be rich in some lifetimes, we'll be poor in some lifetimes, just whatever the combination is, that we need in order to have the probability of the types of experiences that we need
Mm.
are made available to us.
Mm.
But the transition into the body is a simple process. It always occurs in the third trimester of birth. If it is a fairly infantile spirit that is incarnating, it will move into the body permanently earlier in the third trimester.
Mm-hmm.
Some higher spirits don't come in until the last minute of birth.
Oh, wow.
And so it depends on the incarnating spirit. When the baby is moving around inside the mom, then you think of it as the spirit is trying out the controls to see, what controls need to be done or adjusted, whatever, to learn to work with. And then they probably leave. It is improbable that they're going to be there the whole time. So when the baby's
Yeah.
not moving, it just means that they're not occupying the body. They're not in the training mode at that point.
Mm.
But it is, with higher consciousness beings, it's absolutely just at the moment of birth for them to occupy the body. When we die, we will leave the body, and there's almost always a period of confusion because of the change. We are fully aware. We are aware of our surroundings. We usually will float above our body for a few minutes until we get our bearings, get our direction. And
Yeah.
then we are guided to simply make the transition, which is usually perceived as a series of lights, which are just kind of like directional lights to follow the lights. Each light is a vibrational transition point. For people that are lower on the consciousness scale, they will have more lights. And so you need whatever transition level that you need in order to adjust. If you're higher on the evolutionary scale, then you may only have a couple of lights because
Yeah.
you don't need that guidance. But you'll be always, your higher self is always available to you.
Mm.
And there's always folks around to help guide you through. Now, there are people that are so confused by their death, and they have such attachments to people, places, or things that they
Mm.
had when they were alive. And a parent's attachment to a child is a common thing. I can't leave yet. My child needs me for this.
Yeah.
And that they're ghosts, and they're outside of time, and they are confused to the point of not being able to recognize the need to transition to their death. They can stay in that condition as long as they want to. They're not going to be bothered if they want to stay there. And what we
Yeah.
would perceive, again, time is our perception. The linearity of time is our perception, not their perception.
Mm.
And so they will perceive that they're staying in what they deem to be a geographic location as long as they need to in order to resolve and surrender that attachment. But it's not
Yeah.
harmful to them. They're not missing anything other than, staying in that degree of confusion for a period of what we would perceive to be a period of time. And then we may perceive it to be hundreds of years, but they don't recognize it as that.
Mm.
So that's
Yeah.
all that death is. And then we integrate with our metaphysical self. That portion of us that was projected is integrated with our metaphysical self. And then we go on with our learning, assessing it. If you think of it, we're all on a sports team. And if you know most sports teams, they practice all week and then they have a game, for example, on the weekend. And so when we're not incarnate, we're watching game films and we're getting coaching and all of that stuff that a sports team would do. And they review what you did in the last game, and you think about what you're going to do next in the next game to improve your performance. And then you incarnate again, which means it's another game time. And unfortunately, we get to forget all of that learning that we did, other than the deep down in our heart, we have the feeling because of where we began, where we left off, what we need to do. And
Mm.
so we play another game and we try to remember what all the stuff that we learned in our coaching the week before or in between incarnations.
Mm.
And then it game's over and we go back, we review game films and the coach yells at us and all that stuff. And then we
Mm-hmm.
practice more and do it again.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we tend to incarnate with the same spirits because we have soul groups that we identify with. And so we more often than not have probably incarnated with our friends and most of our family over and over and over in just different roles. You may be a mom in this lifetime or a child in the next lifetime to the same people because you're getting different perspectives and how the things you need to learn are presented.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to, when we were getting back to pre-birth planning, and you mentioned something that piqued my interest as well. And that some um, higher frequency beings, more learned beings, they come in like right at the end before the
Mm-hmm.
baby's born. So what would you say happens with stillbirths? Because I think that's like it's such a devastating thing when you're dealing with that in a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that's going on there?
Well, similar thing that is going on. I live in Memphis, and St. Jude Children's Hospital is here in Memphis,
Mm,
and they bring people, their children, in from all over the world that have cancer,
mm,
and large numbers of them don't make it.
true.
They die very young.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, they know before they are born that it is highly probable that they're going to die young.
yeah,
Now, if you think about what we are supposed to learn here, and what we are supposed to learn here is exploring ourselves and surrendering our perceptions of separation and learning sympathy and most importantly compassion.
yeah.
And so think about the effects of a child that dies early
Mm-hmm.
on not only the parents and the siblings and that family, but also the doctors and the nurses and everybody that attended that child. And
Right.
the lessons we perceive to be dramatic, and they
Mm-hmm.
are dramatic because
Mm-hmm.
of the degree of attachment to that entity, but the
Right.
lessons are significant. And so they are providing a service to accelerate the evolution awareness of all the people that are in contact with that child's experience.
Yeah.
Same with the child with the stillbirth.
Wow. Yeah, it puts it into um such a perspective, right? Looking at how connected everything truly is.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like when you kind of have to look at what's going on around the world, even right now, we know that there are people dying. We know that there is just so much happening, and it feels overwhelming
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people,
Okay. Well,
right?
think
Yeah.
think about in the news worldwide the Ukraine and Russian conflict.
Yeah.
Okay. The Russian population and particularly the Russian leader has very much polarized service to self, the negative path.
Yeah.
And they have attacked Ukraine, but Ukraine is, as a populace, is demonstrating significant courage, significant unity. They are, if they didn't have it before, are learning great sympathy and compassion for their fellow countrymen
Mm-hmm.
and becoming a significant example for others in the world to emulate.
Yeah.
And so as we have can't help but have that perspective of the humanness of that, but from a spiritual standpoint they are providing a significant catalyst for every other person in the world to become more aware and evolve.
Yeah. It's just like just going back to putting things into perspective because when we talk about the self-serving entities and then and the beings that are of service to others and how they each play their roles, you also see that these things that we consider to be negative or lower frequency or dark energies, that they have also such a vital role in all of this, even though it's hard to deal with as a human being. But then when you see how we grow from it, how we evolve from it, how communities are formed from it, how there is more compassion, there is more empathy, there are more conversations and things like that, then you see that when you see that kind of impact, then you recognize that there definitely is a greater purpose taking place here for all of this.
Well, the perceptions of, for example, love, and we just use that as an example of the inherent characteristics of the creator. And
Yeah.
if you're polarizing service to others, then you are concentrating on the positive side of love, but love is complete. And so there is a negative side of love as well.
Mm,
And so the service to self is simply providing a very valuable service, but they're exploring the negative side of love, which is, from my perspective, very unpleasant. But
mm,
that notwithstanding, that is an aspect of the completeness of the creator that needs to be explored.
mm. Yeah, I think we have, because even going back to religion, we've tend to kind of like segregated things, right? Because we have the light and the dark, and the light and the dark don't go together, and all those things. But then, as you said, like everything is of the creator. It all comes back to the one thing, right? So
Right. Yeah.
the one place of existence that we all come from. So the light and the dark also does belong to that. It also does come from that.
Yeah.
We've
You may choose not to participate in the dark
Yeah.
side, but it still is a valuable
Hmm.
contributor to the creator knowing itself.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's truly interesting. So I guess what do you have to say then for when you kind of think about how we conceptualize, because we mentioned the Garden of Eden. We mentioned like a few other things as well, where, especially when it comes to the Abrahamic religions and the things that we learned from that, and the commandments, and the this and the that, and what you're allowed to do and what you're supposed to do. And how can we then begin to reconcile that? Because I think the good thing is people are now beginning to have more of these conversations, because us talking about this would have just been blasphemous like
Mm.
years ago.
Yes.
um so I don't know, like, did you even have any type of a religious upbringing that kind of informed your own perception before your awakening began? Like,
Yeah.
I'd love to get into this whole religious topic of all of this.
Well, um, religion, as I've already said, is it was a concept that the Anunnaki introduced to to help control our behavior, and the, the foundation of every major religion that I have familiarity with
Mm,
is the same. It is exactly the same, and that foundation is that there is a God and we are separate from that God. And God is a
yeah,
religious concept. The reality is, and everyone has a concept of God, regardless of what your religious upbringing. Even if you're an atheist, you have a concept of God of some sort. Uh, in that concept, if there was a God, if you're an atheistic believer, would that God be infinite?
Mm.
And if your answer is no, then, or even if it is, then in order for the concept of God to be infinite, infinite doesn't mean a lot of stuff. Infinite means everything.
Yeah.
Infinity is the numerical value of infinity is one. Any other number is finite. The only infinite number is one. And so, if that is true, if the Creator is infinite and infinity means everything, that includes you too.
Yeah.
You cannot be separate from the Creator and the Creator be infinite. And so, I've written a book called Edifying Children of a Lesser God,
Mm.
which goes into explanation of that. That is a foundational concept that gives religion meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you know that you're the one infinite creator experiencing yourself at this range of consciousness, then your best source of information about yourself and the creator is you, not a
Mm.
religion. And so
Yes.
the religion has to have that capacity to intercede itself between you and God in order to have value.
Mm-hmm.
And therein was the concept of introducing the Anunnaki in between, as the church or a church, between you and God, that you couldn't talk to God directly yourself because you're a peon.
Yeah.
If you realized that you were the one infinite creator experiencing yourself at this range of consciousness, well, you don't need them. You need to get them out of the way.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Oh my goodness, Dean. Yeah, you're preaching right now.
I'm sorry.
I love it. Yes. I was just taking it in. Yeah. Yeah. That was like so on point. I love that. So speaking about Anunnaki, you mentioned Egypt, that their operating base was there. Um I got into a little bit some of the history back then and Thoth and his work. What is the interconnection there? Is there any interconnection there at all?
With
The Emerald Tablet of Thoth, like he was also like a huge figure back then as well. So like
Okay. Yeah. Toth or Thoth, whatever, actually is an occupant of the remnants of Venus. If you understand that the service to self kind of works like a Tupperware structure,
yeah.
and Thoth is a fifth density negative entity that has been instrumental in distorting earthly perceptions, and he is the sole occupant of Venus,
Mm.
and he has had a long involvement with Earth. But no, he used to visit me all the time. We have a decent relationship. I don't fear him anymore, but I have um, a friendly relationship with him. But his polarization, his philosophical leanings are decidedly service to self.
Really?
Yeah, and
Wow.
the
So like
emerald tablets are service to self
wow. So
teachings.
I'd love to hear more on that and like your whole relationship with him right now, and kind of like I guess what's his perception on what he was doing or what he was teaching.
Well, what he was teaching was confusion and distortion, and trying to perpetuate that service to self mentality
Mm.
to keep the population and understand uh, all of creation below sixth density, and sixth density is essentially the creator of this, is fueled by a distortion of energy called intelligent energy. And it is a constant source of fuel for us. You have intelligent energy flowing through you right now. Every aspect of consciousness around you has the same source flowing within you.
Yeah.
And it enters through our perineum or our feet and flows through our body, and it provides us with the energy to live, to
Yeah.
exist. Okay, um, that is from your higher self. And when you choose the service to self path, then in order to graduate from third density, you are choosing to separate yourself from unity with your higher self. So
Mm-hmm.
you are choosing to divorce yourself from that source of energy. But you still have to have that source of energy in order to continue to participate in creation. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have to get it from someplace else.
Mm.
And the best place to get that is from third density beings, because it's like the Goldilocks porridge, where we have enough intelligent energy to steal, but we're not smart enough to know we're not supposed to give it away.
Mm-hmm.
And so third density is perpetually a target for service to self individuals in order to farm the intelligent energy that we are so willing to give up because we don't know any better. And
Mm.
intelligent energy fuels our awareness. So as we heal our distortions of perception and heal our false identities and become more of our authentic self, then this intelligent energy that is flowing becomes less restricted and energizes the awareness part of us that allows us to accelerate our evolution along the enlightenment path. So the service to self is in competition not only with us for our intelligent energy sources, but every other service to self entity, because it, as I said, it worked kind of like Tupperware. You've got a huge number of minions out there selling Tupperware, trying to
Mm.
farm this intelligent energy from the third density population. Then you have middle managers, and then you have people up the line, and each person, each step up the line gets a little bit of the intelligent energy, but cumulatively they get a lot of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the real target of why service to self continues to interact with third density and be such a hindrance to our evolutionary development is they want to keep us suppressed so that we'll continue to feed them with the intelligent energy that they need to participate in creation. Because
Mm-hmm.
if they don't, then they would disappear. They would
Mm.
be, merge back with the creator, but all of their perception of self would vanish.
Mm. Mm. So what do you have to
So they're desperate in order to maintain that source of intelligent energy.
Okay, so taking that into consideration, what do you say about other beings that are not incarnated as humans? Maybe they're Arcturians, maybe they're other beings. What role? Because, like, like we've been told, of course, that we also have beings that are really helpful towards our evolution in different ways, playing different
Mhm.
roles in order to help us on our evolutionary path as human beings. So, like, is there anything that they do to kind of counteract um this kind of, I guess, energy harvesting service to self beings?
Well, yes, one of the more strategic things that they've done, providing us with information, and that's the purpose of the communications from channels. That's the purpose of the anticipated direct contact with the physical bodies of alien beings, is to
Mm,
provide us with information. The third density, the difficult thing that we have to learn in third density is we have complete control over our evolution.
Yeah.
And we have to assume responsibility for our progression along the evolutionary scale. And if you think about the other big thing, other than the perception of separation, that religion does is it convinces us that we have to be saved, that
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
inferior.
Yeah.
Okay, and every religion does that to some degree in some form or fashion. They're always looking for a savior to take you out of the misery of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is a major service to self hegemony that they have made pervasive in the human population.
Mm-hmm.
Because as long as you need a savior or a hero to save you, then you limit, or if not totally ignore, the fact that you have not only the responsibility but the tools necessary in order to advance yourselves along the evolutionary path.
Mm. Yeah. Do you think there are like, do you think there are any aspects when you think about religious texts then? Do you think that there are any aspects remaining within any of them that can give us like little nuggets of the direction that we really should be going?
Well,
Because,
the primary nuggets that religion provides is it gets people together in a sense of higher vibrational fellowship.
yeah,
When you have church gatherings and everybody's sharing food and eating and just having a good conversation and learning about each other, that's very valuable. But
yeah,
when you get down to that can be completely without the religion, but it's just the nucleus that brings people together in that standpoint. Churches organize a lot of great charitable work, which gets people involved with others that are completely socially different from them, so it educates them about other aspects of the population they would probably never have contact with.
yeah,
So, from that standpoint, churches provide some very significant benefit to individuals in the population, but where they only go so far because they have these hegemonies that restrict their thinking and their assumption of responsibility for their own evolution.
right, right. Yeah, that is true. All right. Like we've spoken about so many things today. I could just go on with the questions, but I know I have to let you go soon. You have to come back.
I would love to.
I have
Yeah.
more.
Okay.
But just real quick, I know you mentioned one of your books earlier in the conversation, but then you also have the Enigma of Consciousness.
Yeah,
Also,
which
I'm
is
very intrigued to know what that's about, what we can expect from that too.
Well, that is to date. That's my compendium book, and it explains the origins of creation, the purpose of creation, your purpose as an individual. It explains in much more detail than we can cover in a conversation each of the densities. It also explains the archetypical mind, which is a blueprint for how we process thought, and actually defines. The process of our evolution as we modify what we perceive to be our brain and in the evolutionary process. It talks about the choices, the choice that we have to make. It is as complete as I could make it 2 years ago when I wrote the thing, and I've learned more since. But that notwithstanding, things have changed. But from a completeness. I've tried to make it as accurate and as complete as possible.
Mm, that's amazing. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with? Any last words before we head off? Anything that you wanted to mention that we haven't addressed in
Well, the
this
primary
conversation?
difficulty in accepting the information that we've been offering in this discussion
Yeah.
is that it's not difficult to understand, other than from the standpoint it challenges your prevailing perception of self and your prevailing belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what is difficult to understand, that it is it challenges that, and that is stressful to people, because when our
That's true.
identity is challenged, that is in and of itself a stress. But that stress is our teacher. When we feel stress, we are to become aware of what it is that we have incorporated into our perception of self that doesn't feel good, and use that as the tool for our healing of false perceptions of self, assumption of responsibility for our advancement along the enlightenment path, and the measure of how we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dean. This was a great conversation. I truly enjoyed it. Um, can you leave us with your contacts? Where can we find you, your work?
I have a website with all my contact information in the books,
Yeah.
and I run do two podcasts as well. It's just the initial D, Dean Graves, all one word, .org.
Okay. Thank you so much.